Hello, today is November 10th, 2023, and welcome to episode 274 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm Jessica Jones, NSI's Deputy Executive Director, and if you're watching, we have a very special all-in-office whole crew today. So we've got Les Munson, Senior Fellow, Jamil, our Executive Director, Morgan Vina, another Senior Fellow, and extra special guest, John Lipsey, NSI's Director of Policy and all-time fave, all here. So today, we've got a few things happening. I couldn't help but mention, because it was a big thing in the office. The Pandas went home from the National Zoo yesterday. They were taken back to China. Stolen, brought on FedEx trucks and then on FedEx U.S. company planes back to China.
Where's PETA when you need it, Jones?
It was traumatic. There's a lot of opinions in the office, but we're not...
Global repression. Pandas are being repressed.
Bring them home. Panda diplomacy is one thing we're going to be discussing today.
We should send them back all the ping pong tables, too.
Ouch! That's a lot of ping pong tables.
I like ping pong.
We got to put something on those boats going back to China.
All right.
And then our second topic, also somewhat China-related, is that the development...
Speaking of boats going
from
China.
Connection. I didn't even think of that, Lipsey. The US Development Finance Corporation, better known as the DFC, announced on Wednesday that lending $500 million to Sri Lanka to help the country build a deep water shipping container terminal. As part of our efforts to expand to build infrastructure abroad and around strategic parts of Asia. For those of you that haven't taken geography in a while, that includes myself. If you're wondering why Sri Lanka is so important, the country sits between the Strait of Malacca. No.
Malacca.
Also a hot topic.
Close enough.
And the Suez Canal, which Jamil Jaffer hates that fact, but while true...
They're 5,000 miles apart. I mean, it's crazy. Yes, it does sit between this thing over here. I mean, it's a 1/5 of the world apart, but whatever.
It does
we'll explain global trade to you later.
Trading vessels pass through this area, so it is quite important.
They also pass by India and a million other countries on their way between Straits of Malacca.
For everyone who wants to see it later.
Check it out.
This loan represents the kind of big ticket deals found in China's Belt and Road Initiative, which is a topic we cover a lot here on the show. In fact, China has actually helped out Sri Lanka as well. They helped build a port on a relatively remote southern shore, but actually now the port belongs back to China under a 99-year lease and along with 15,000 miles around the port.
Like Gitmo, by the way, 99-year lease.
Okay.
Topic for another day.
Yep. So first question, there's a lot of things, if you guys don't know, the DFC was brought about under President Trump. So it's kind of it's a consolidation of a few different efforts, but it's a new project.
That was just the old OPEC, no?
And in FY 2023, it has already committed more than $9 billion to new projects. Okay, so let me turn it first to you. We mentioned China. China has helped build a port out in Sri Lanka. What's the difference there between their work and ours? What's going on?
So the port in Hambantota in Sri Lanka, which was selected because it's the hometown of the former ruling family of Sri Lanka, was a political maneuver by China, is part of China's larger Belt and Road Initiative, which is basically its foreign aid program. Their foreign aid program is a disaster on a number of levels. They make bad decisions about where to invest. It's not sustainable. These things are all going to fall off the grid in the next 5 or 10 years and become irrelevant. We learned a lot of these lessons ourselves in our foreign aid program generations ago. China is just now learning them. We'll see if they can actually change from that. Our decision, the DFC's decision to go to Colombo, which is a more sensible place to do this, and do it in a real way, not based on politics, but based on what is going to be, sustainable from a business perspective, is a much better approach, and is something that I think will pay off for a lot longer. There is a question here in our political system on the DFC. Should it be just for development projects? Should it be for U.S. national interests? I think it's got to be both. Frankly, Congress is wrestling with this. It's actually Democrats, to their credit, who want to see it be more strategically advantageous to us. And Republicans, for some reason, are really focused on the development aspects. I think both sides need to show a little flexibility here and get together on it.
Yeah, so the DFC, one of its mandates, it's got to return, it's got to make money. To your point, it takes national security foreign policy. Is it able to compete with the Belt and Road Initiative? I mean, which doesn't have these considerations. Is it actually going to be able to compete with China and what they're doing?
I think the Belt and Road Initiative, China's got, good 10 years on us when it comes to BRI and sort of overseas. I think it's important to know that BRI itself is a domestic manifestation, right? China needs to be strong at home, and in order to do so, they project power abroad. And so I think what we're seeing with a lot of these BRI projects globally is just that, right? And so with China's investment in Sri Lanka in particular, look, I mean, it was a $1.26 billion loan, which
They're never going to be able to pay
right.
back.
Well, and Sri Lanka defaulted on it.
Yeah.
I mean, they basically coughed up a port to Beijing, and so I think this is the prime example of debt trap diplomacy. I will also note that Sri Lanka was the first staff DAO that I took when I was with Senate Foreign Relations.
Nice.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I know. Thank you for approving that, Wes. And so, I mean, I do think that what we're seeing with the DFC investment in Colombo in particular is really tremendous progress, because when I was there, I'm not going to say how many years ago, but we focused purely on development and humanitarian assistance. It was food assistance. There was these small USA development projects. And now that we're actually taking a step further through the DFC, I think is it sort of demonstrates how far we've come. And we should continue to sort of take a look at where we can strategically compete against China and other middle income countries or lower income countries, if the case may be.
Yeah, and so the DFC has received some criticism, though, that some folks feel that there should be more focus on, poorer countries, less resource countries, and a lot of investments are going to middle to high income countries. For example, India got $500 million in FY23 on energy security supply chains, and so the development part of their mission is being less fulfilled than, say, the national security foreign policy considerations. I mean, is it? What do you guys think?
I mean, that's the mission. Let's be clear. The U.S. government's putting money into DFC, Exim Bank, all these other institutions, USAID, to move U.S. national security and foreign policy forward. It is, if development happens, that's a great outcome. But just because they changed the name from the Overseas Private Investment Corporation to the Development Finance Corporation, don't kid yourself. It is about American national security and foreign policy interests, and that is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's our tax dollars. We had to use them for American benefits. If it provides development in other countries, hallelujah, great. But look, that's what it's doing in Sri Lanka, right? It's going to create jobs and opportunities and economic gain for Sri Lanka. That's a win for everybody, right? It is worth noting that we are loaning them $500 million. Not clear they're going to be able to pay that back, just like they couldn't pay the $1.2 billion back, right? We're not charging extortionate rates like the Chinese were. But that's going to be a challenge. And we are doing a deal with this well-known Indian conglomerate, the Adani Group, which got itself into trouble a while back, very closely associated with Narendra Modi. So, there are questions here as well. This is not free from, all manner of questions.
What do you think, Sean?
Other questions are, this is always going to be messy. The port, the sort of more economic port that this project is actually supporting, to your point, we've been behind China with this kind of development assistance, and we are here in this port. China is already managing the port in a big way. They have huge development projects around the area. So to the extent that this investment is helpful to Sri Lanka, it's also going to be helpful to Chinese interests in that port. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that's actually managed and whether we have conditions on who's going to be managing this port terminal and how it's going to be open to trade and protected from other interests. But, I think the DFC is going to face we're just getting started here in a more robust way. We're doing this in the face of a global debt crisis that's only starting to compound, like we saw a generation ago. And that's going to lead to a lot of these Chinese projects, blowing up, but it's also going to limit and inhibit our ability to go in a way where we can feel like this money is being spent soundly. But it absolutely should be done according to our strategic interests. And, one of those right now, a big one is reducing our dependence on China and rebalancing global supply chains. And we have to put some money into these countries where we can, develop their capacity to support a global supply chain that's more resilient and more secure and more trusted than the one we're relying on.
All right, I'm going to be the Nikki Haley of this debate. I'm not going to use my shoes as a weapon, but I am going to tell you what is realistic. What's realistic for DFC is being both a development agency and something that carries out U.S. strategic interests. No, I know, but you guys are all weighing in on the strategic side. That's not sustainable in American politics. That won't happen. Congress won't approve that. You need to do both. The reason DFC was an expanded version of OPEC and given a larger mandate and larger budget authority was to do both of those things. So it needs to be active in the poorest of the poor countries. That is a good thing in and of itself. It also needs to do things for U.S. strategic interests. One of the things the administration's got to do, and they need some real leadership on this, is fix the equity scoring issue. That's an OMB problem. Congress needs to be more aggressive on it. I don't understand why that hasn't been fixed so far. It's been bollocksing us up for years. This is a good sign. One other quick point. The Hambantota port being turned over to China was a huge problem for China. That made a lot of other countries in the region skeptical of BRI. Yeah. It's losing favor in Europe. Latin America needs to wake up. There's a story in the Wall Street Journal today about Uruguay turning towards China and perhaps away from the United States. Look and see what happened in Sri Lanka. It's a huge mistake to embrace Beijing.
Well, last question. Should we have given the pandas back? Everybody, let's go.
No.
Wow.
Save the pandas.
No, and as a matter of fact, we should double down and keep the pandas in Atlanta.
We were talking about the pandas in Atlanta. They're next, guys. Do you think we're giving them back?
I would like to say,
things deteriorate enough that we are not giving those pandas
Where
back.
are the citizens who are going to take independent action to save the pandas? We cannot send them to a prison colony in China.
We've got the Eagle Warriors blocking the highways. We needed them to block that.
They need to get on something that actually has some practical value. Save the pandas.
Where's PETA when you need him?
Exactly. With that, that's a wrap. Thanks so much to Alex Toki, Claude Jennings, and the entire NSI team for their help in producing today's episode, and for our special guests and everyone in person. Thanks, guys. Join us again next week on Monday, November 13th for another awesome episode of Fault Lines, the National Securities Podcast that gets you smart fast on the national security and foreign policy debate shaking up America. Check out this very fun conversation on YouTube. And you're going to like what you heard. So please rate and review wherever you subscribe.
And subscribe.